Well, a few days ago, NewsX accessed the 220-page Justice Kirpal report into the Kanishka bombings. Mr. H.S. Khola, former DG of Civil Aviation, was a part of the team that released the Khola report and established that the Air India aircraft was indeed bombed. Today, for the first time, he speaks to us for an exclusive interview. So thank you so much for speaking with NewsX. Sir, how did the investigation into the Kanishka bombings start?
When the information about Kanishka accident came, a meeting was held in the Ministry of Civil Aviation. And then we came to know that the accident has happened in international waters about 125 miles away from Irish coast, because the blip of the aircraft was lost on Shannon ATC control. So the precise location of the accident was known, that it was in international waters and 125 miles from the Irish coast. So as per the international rules, India was the authority to investigate the accident. So a meeting was held in the Ministry of Civil Aviation and a plan was prepared that the team should immediately leave for Cork. That was the nearest place for accident. So then Secretary Civil Aviation, DGCA, myself and other officers immediately planned to leave on that very day. Even though we didn't have the visas, but the Irish government offered that visas will be given on arrival at there. So the team of about 7-8 people went to Cork, Ireland, and immediately on landing there, a recce was done of the sea, precisely on the location of latitude and longitude given by the air traffic control. And in that area, we found a lot of floating wreckage items. So it became clear that the aircraft has gone into the sea in this area. And then we came back to the Cork. And thereafter, the investigation process started, and the other agencies involved, that is Canada, because 268 passengers on board were from Canada, and America, because the aircraft manufacturer was by Boeing, by the US company, so US people. The Irish people, because the aircraft control was with the Shannon air traffic control, so Irish people joined. UK people also joined, and the French people also joined. So the various government agencies of various countries assembled in Cork and then started planning to the investigation. So a detailed plan was prepared as to what should be done and how we should move about, because nothing was available, no passengers, no eyewitness, no crew, and no wreckage of the aircraft was available. So a detailed plan was prepared by the experts that this is the way we should go about in this investigation.
So how did you go about proving that the incident happened and actually happened because of an explosion?
Well, initially the first evidence, the material evidence we got, was a number of floating bodies of the victims were found on sea, floating on the sea. All those bodies were recovered and brought to the Cork hospital. So the examination of the bodies was done, post-mortem was done, and the most important evidence we got from the bodies was that many of the bodies did not have any external damage, not even scratch, but their bones were found about 1 inch and 2 inch, not more than that one. So it was very clear by the doctors that this can happen only if the aircraft had broken up in air, and after that the bodies were tumbling in air at very high speed, and due to the violent motion of the bodies, the bones will fracture, and then only they will be in this shape. And because the impact with the water did not cause injuries, but the internal injuries, which is called as flail injuries, were found on that one. So that was the first evidence we got that the aircraft had broken up in air at very high altitude. Thereafter, we started getting floating wreckage, because the light parts were thrown out of the aircraft, like seats, even the leading edge of the wing, leading edge of the trailing, and the tailplane. These were also found floating on the wreckage, and that floating wreckage was not recovered from sea by anybody, but because of the sea waves, the floating wreckage case started coming after about 10 days into the Irish coast. So then we collected all those wreckage items and kept in a
Right,
hanger
sir.
in cork, and then made it in a shape as if the aircraft shape. Whatever was available, they were put on the aircraft stage. And the damage pattern was very clear and typical, that leading edges of the wing, leading edges were.
Right. And so, what can you tell us about the challenges that you actually faced during the Kanishka bombing probe?
Well, the question came. The court of inquiry has also been appointed in the meantime by Government of India, and court had its own requirement to prove any accident. And in that one, the first question asked was, what was the origin of the explosive substance on board aircraft if it was an explosion? That's the first thing I asked. So I was involved in that exercise very in detail, and I had determined that the area in which an explosion had occurred was the container in which the interline baggage was kept, and that interline baggage had come from Vancouver. So I went to Vancouver and I checked up with the CP Air people who had sent that baggage, and the girl who had checked in told me that even though this passenger did not have the confirmed reservation on Air India flight, but he was so violent that I somehow interlined their baggage on the Air India flight. So that was the first sort of a human error, that the baggage was interlined on Air India even though no confirmed reservation was there. The second part was that the passenger who had checked in did not board the CP Air flight and he remained in Vancouver. Meaning, the baggage is traveling to Toronto from Vancouver without the passenger on board. That was the deficiency of the regulation at that time, International Civil Aviation Regulation. There was no requirement to match the baggage with the passenger. So the baggage, interline baggage from Vancouver came to Toronto. And at Toronto, when this baggage was being transported to Air India flight, it was being checked by X-ray machine. Unfortunately, the X-ray machine.
And so, what understanding did you get of the planners and bombers of the aircraft during the long investigation?
Well, the other aspect was that, yes, the explosion has occurred on board and the aircraft is broken up in air, and it was from the cargo compartment. How do we prove that it was not due to any structural failure or any other device? So then it became necessary to recover wreckage from the sea. So because that only can prove that it was there. So for recovering the wreckage, first mapping of the wreckage was done. It was lying over an area of 40 square kilometers. So entire wreckage was photographed and videographed. And after that, these ones, it was, one engineer was on board the ship, and he could get some indication of the possible explosive evidence. So those, what we call them as the targets, those targets were numbered. Target number, if I remember, the most important was 362 and latitude, longitude. So he was noting down target number so and so, latitude number so and so, and we were noting down that yes, this is showing some damage. So the important targets of the wreckage were given numbers, and their latitude and longitude were noted down to make sure that when we visit next time to recover them, we can reach their exact location. So with this information of the entire wreckage photographed and important wreckage items having target numbers, latitude, longitude, then we went to Boeing. And in Boeing Seattle, all the photographs were spread on the walls of a big room, and then we started analyzing those photographs. The experts from Air India, experts from Boeing, experts from DSV, everybody joined in that exercise. It was a very difficult exercise because knowing very clearly that recovering an item from the bottom of the sea, which is 6,700 feet deep, is not an easy task. And if we recover an item which has no evidence value, it is wastage of money, effort, and everything. So the whole team was very careful and cautious that whatever we decide that this item is to be recovered must be very clearly showing some evidence that yes, it is an explosion damage and is required for that purpose. So we made notes that this wreckage item or this part number so and so is showing this type of sort of structural damage which is close to the explosive damage. And in that process, we made a list of 32 items which gave an indication that the explosion had occurred in close to these items. Those 32 items were given the priority also, that which item to be recovered first is not to be left to any shipman. It is to be decided by people who have seen the wreckage fracture. So the priority wise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that number 1 is the highest priority, 2 like was made 32 items. And with that information, 32 items, this is the latitude, this is the longitude, this is the photograph of that one.
And so is it surprising to you that not one bomber has been punished and who are still roaming scot-free?
It made very clear the regulations at that time were totally inadequate, Internet regulation. So it was realized by the International Civil Aviation Organization, with which I had worked very closely, that this needs to be changed, totally overhauled. And that overall process started not immediately after Kanishka Attack, sometime later on. There is something different on that one. So India was given very high responsibility to change the regulation and draft the new regulation. So in Indian Civil Aviation Department, Security, Bureau of Civil Aviation Security of India was given almost a leading role in that one, that you along with other members of the country, various countries, draft a new regulation which should be for the security of aviation. So that complete manual, which called Annex 17 of the ICAO, that was completely overhauled and then passed by the regulation. So that had become now today the standard. And today you can't imagine that anybody not going on board, his baggage will go. You just can't imagine. The security type of check, X-ray check, and another lot of check are so complicated, so detailed that this type of thing cannot happen. Fortunately, the regulations in place today, and even the Indian security system, Bureau of Civil Aviation Security, has established a very credible system to detect or prevent this type of accidents in future.
And sir, can you elaborate about the state of the aircraft after the bombing from what you had examined?
The ICAO regulation said that investigation is the authority of the India, but the security investigation is not part of that one. It was not part of our thing. It was done by Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the case was also filed in the Vancouver court. So they were doing all this investigation. Since I was the investigator in this case, I myself and one of the engineers of India were called by the court to give evidence in the Canadian court about whatever we have found to use for them. Unfortunately, we both of them traveled after London, and it was 9/11 day when the explosions have occurred in the United States, and thereafter the airspace to Canada, US and everything was closed, so we could not go to the Vancouver, so we had to turn back. So basically the security aspect investigation, whether lapse or any other thing or what caused, was the role of the Canadian RCMP as a police and Canadian Vancouver court as a legal thing. So it was done by them. It was not part of our thing, and I was not associated anything more than that one, except to give the evidence whatever we have found out, and which we could not do because of that unfortunate 9/11 incident.
And so why did it take Canada till 2010 to release its report on the Kanishka bombings when the Justice Kirpal report was released in 1986?
Well, I'm not aware of the Canadian legal system or investigation system, court system, but I'm sure there must be some valid reason for that one. So that area is not basically, I'm a basically technical aviation investigator, not security, and not knowing anything about the Canadian system. So I would not be able to comment on that one, that why it took longer time or what was done. That is the Canadian system.
So do you think the prompt action from CSIS and RCMP could have avoided this bombing?
No, the warning, no warning was available anywhere. No warning, no. Because it happened in the planning of the people who were doing this type of cause. So I don't think any evidence was there to show any warning anywhere in this thing.
So Canada, does it still have an opportunity to punish the planners of these bombings and finally deliver justice?
It's the Canadian system, security system, their legal system, not Indian. We had no authority on that one. We had no role in that one. It naturally Canadian legal system will take care of that one, and they must have done that one. So security aspect, as I said, was not at all ours, and we had not gone into that one. We had no authority also to do the security investigation in a foreign country. We had no authority, and we had to, and I must one thing, Madhu. I will give you one more photograph where the Canadian agency has the counterpart head of the Canadian Aviation Safety, CASB, Canadian Aviation Safety Board, is with me in this photograph in Canada, Ottawa, and they helped me everything, whatever I went to collect it. The Canadian Aviation Safety Board, they helped me. So the aviation investigation was our report, and they provided me all whatever I wanted. They arranged it. I could not have gone to Vancouver and asked the girl that why did you do it? No, it was done by this Canadian Safety Board director, the head, that yes, I will arrange it. What you want, I will arrange it. So the Canadian Safety Board did all the groundwork for me to get the evidence in Canada, because it is their country. They can only do.
Right, sir.
So this is how we had worked. And I just show the Canadian, you will get the tapes. Yes, the tapes we gave them also, FDR tape, CVR tape. But he was the person who made every arrangement in Canada, whatever I wanted to see. Even at the Toronto airport, I could not have gone and checked the X-ray system or that one. It was he who arranged for me. I used to tell him, I want to check this one. He also used to give me the advice. Being an aviator himself, he used to give it. But I used to give him that, yes, I want to do this. And he will do the arrangement. Excellent cooperation, excellent help again. Otherwise, in a foreign country, you can't do all that much, this much of it.
Sir, really appreciate you taking out the time and giving us those important and, never heard before answers pertaining to the Kanishka crash.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.